Operation Desert Storm unfolded in 1990.
All of a sudden, mortar rounds started coming in on top of us.
Gulf War veteran Carter Nelson was near the tip of the spear during the ground war, clearing mines for the invasion force.
So here, through this section, was the minefields.
The U.S.-led military campaign to chase Iraqi forces out of Kuwait finished in a lightning-fast 100 hours.
It was just a wall of flame just across the desert, about 3 miles ahead of us. I lived in total darkness for 4 days, where it rained black on us from the oil fires.
But the darkness of that war lingered with this Gulf War veteran long after he returned home from the desert.
My shoulders one night froze in place. And I went to the VA, and the doctor said, oh, that's just part of getting old. You're going to have to get used to it. I was 24.
Nelson is one of thousands of Gulf War veterans who started experiencing a series of health problems, including joint aches, memory loss, and chronic fatigue after their wartime service. The mishmash of debilitating physical and mental pain was summed up with an all-encompassing label, Gulf War Syndrome.
Something was in those clouds, more than just oil.
We last spoke to Carter Nelson back in 1996. 5 years after the war, he received a letter from the Veterans Administration confirming his health problems might be tied to exposure to the nerve agent sarin during his wartime service.
If they're admitting this, maybe I have a chance to get some help.
Other causes under suspicion at the time included exposure to depleted uranium shells Nelson carried on his tank, pre-war military vaccinations, and toxic smoke from the oil well fires.
Up till now, there's never been a positive response by the government that even believes that we're sick.
Are you better or worse than you were the last time we talked to you?
Better because I know how to cope with it. That's the only reason.
At age 46, this former Marine keeps in touch with a support group of Gulf War veterans via Facebook. And more than 20 years later, his war buddies are still waiting to learn the cause of their persistent health problems.
We've learned to suffer in silence because we don't believe there's anything that can be done.
And our job is to really understand what veterans' health concerns are and how military service might have affected them.
In a recent telephone conference call, representatives from the Veterans Administration in Washington explain some of what they've learned in the last 2 decades about Gulf War Syndrome.
Well, the term we use now is called chronic multi-symptom illness, and it certainly does exist, and the veterans certainly do suffer from it. Somewhere between maybe 25 to 35% of Gulf War veterans do report chronic multi-symptom illness. We're not able to find one syndrome which really defined all of those symptoms that the Gulf War veterans had.
Do we know what caused this chronic multi-symptom illness?
I don't think we do, actually. There are so many different things that veterans might have been exposed to that they're convinced caused their symptoms that it's very difficult to sort that out.
And the VA has now made a distinct shift in its approach to helping Gulf War veterans dealing with chronic health problems.
We're focusing more these days on treatments of the symptoms rather than trying to get at the cause of the problems, simply because it's just too difficult a problem.
For each mile that keeps us apart, there's one thought that brings us together.
Carter Nelson says his wife wrote him every day during his deployment in the Middle East. Those keepsakes he'll save. But after 20 years of trying, he still can't rid himself of the health problems this Marine says he carried home from war.
About 3 o'clock yesterday, I was at work and my shoulders started hurting bad and freezing up. My joints were starting to ache. My mind goes cloudy. And I couldn't function.
For now, he's resigned to living with the physical and mental pain because he's coped for so long, it's all he knows.